Hey guys and gals, Nary here from Drake Wing Gaming. It's Mountain Twitter, the Gaming Drag. Today I'm coming back at you with the Let's Play episode of A Fall from Grace. So let's go ahead and jump right back into it, shall we? Alarm chain, you were up and let's go. What voice did I do for him? My name's Dion, short for Dionysus. Victor giggled. Stage name, more like. Dion turned to face him with the blankest expression he could muster. What would you rather be calling me? I absolutely despise my birth name. I'd rather be dragged through the city streets tied to a cart than have that used against me. The hyena began walking, holding the torch above his head as the others followed suit. Victor rested his hand on the older bandit's shoulder. I'm just fooling around, Dion. You forget who's providing the food this evening, and such insults to the group's leader will not be taken lightly. I see your theatrical outbursts haven't changed at all since our last meeting. As the group made their way through the muddy ground and thick undergrowth, Cedric felt a few branches pinch and scratch the side of his legs. He needed a change of wardrobe once they got to this camp. Both his current suit and breeches weren't going to hold up much longer. When was our last meeting? It seems so long ago. The Doberman spoke up from behind them with a slight northern accent. We last saw Vic a year ago at least. Must have been after mugging that old posh wanker. Which one? Those are all that we rob. The one with the scowl and mug that even a mother would have trouble loving. Yet still to ring a bell. The Sun Bear chimed in, hoping to clarify with his friend's words. I believe they were the one who was embezzling from the orphanage. Oh, Sanderson. That would make sense. Hey, Blake's right. After that, you all decided to move and set up camp elsewhere, but I still didn't feel ready to leave my home county yet. I assume that's not the case anymore. Again, it's a long story. I'll explain everything once we get to the... Here we are. Y'all left the fireplace burning? That's dangerous. The group came to a halt, having now reached a clearing in the forest. Cedric could see a lit campfire a few feet away, surrounded by some wide tents standing beside an aging carriage, which the bandits were seemingly using to store food and drink, judging by the shine of the bottles he could discern on the inside. The hyena lifted his right hand to his mouth and bellowed. We've returned, boys! Come feast your eyes upon who we found near Hearn's Oak. A couple of figures emerged from behind one of the tents as the coyote heard one of them reply excitedly. Is that Victor? This bandit rushed toward them and warmly embraced the fox. Victor laughed cheerfully. Holla, my favorite feline. What a pleasure to see you again. The bandit in question was a tall and broad tiger, whose height was only surpassed by Dion's. He was wearing what looked like an old dark red overcoat along with a leather belt with a small dagger tied to one side. Like, you know? At first, he seemed the friendliest of all the bandits, greeting Victor with a warm and welcoming tone. As the tiger let go, he turned to face the coyote, much like Dion had done earlier. And who's this feller you've brought with you? Oh, maybe I should do a southern accent for him. And who's this fella you brought with you? Victor cleared his throat now that all the bandits were positioned in a circle surrounding the two friends. I think some introductions are at hand. Lads, this is my best friend, Cedric, a charming and kind soul, as well as a terrifically talented artist. The coyote rolled his eyes at this last remark. Oh, please, V, not this again. The others all greeted him merrily. Cedric, you've already met Dion, the leader of this parcel of rogues. Then the fox took a few steps toward the bandit standing to his left. This handsome devil is Hollis, their very own bartender. This tiger held out his arm and gently took Cedric's hand, speaking in a sweet southwestern accent. I don't know. I'm just going to make him southern. Pleasure to meet you. Pleasure to meet you. It's very exciting to meet a friend of Victor's. Pleasure's all mine. The coyote smiled shyly as he attempted to make conversation. I don't think I've ever heard of a tiger bartender before. Hollis cheerfully replied. No? Why, my whole family are bartenders, as well as many others I've met. I assure you we're no rarity. All along with him, I should also introduce you to his faithful carriage. Hi, she's a sturdy one. I've been using her to store our food and drink supplies for donkey's years. Speaking of which, let me go and cook something for you both. I assume you're hungry. To be completely honest, I would kill for some food right now. I'd kill for much less. The others chuckled, but Victor swiftly answered the Doberman. Easy now, no need to scare Cedric already. The fox faced his friend once again. This moody fellow is Blake. He puts up a stern facade, but you'll learn to love him. And I do enjoy scaring the newcomers, this is true. Before Victor could elaborate further, the sun bear Cedric had been curiously eyeing on his way to the camp walked up to him and shook his hand. Hello, Cedric. I'm Ridley, and those are some very stylish clothes you're wearing. The coyote smiled awkwardly, as he hadn't been expecting this comment. He brushed some dirt off his suit as he replied, Oh, thank you. They're not in great shape, as you can see. I can help you with that. I take care of mending everyone's garments here. Just let me know if you need anything, and I'll gladly assist you. Victor playfully crossed his arms. I see Ridley hasn't bothered to wait for an introduction. Frankly, Vic, I've heard enough people tell me who I am to last me a lifetime. I'd rather introduce myself. Of course, I understand. And don't forget, there's one more of us you need to introduce. Why, yes, how could I? Victor walked up to a short and chubby housecat, dressed in elegant formal clothes and wearing an old powdered wig. Cedric was very surprised. This was the least bandit-looking person out of the whole bunch. In fact, he wouldn't have seemed out of place behind a marble counter in a city bank. This is Selwyn? Oh my god. Yep, we all know that name's familiar. From a different game, but still. This is Selwyn, one of the toughest criminals I've met. The cat grew red in the face, replying with a deep voice. Oh, hush, Victor, enough of your bullying. I was serious. As the fox turned toward his friend, Dion chimed in on the conversation again. You see, our Selwyn used to be an accountant. Then one day he realized his life was going absolutely nowhere. So he decided to embark on a grand adventure. He stole all the company's finances, living his old life forever and joining our merry gang. This hit close to home, as Cedric realized his life story sounded incredibly similar to Selwyn's on a surface level. He wondered what fate might have befallen him had he not decided to leave his hometown. That makes me sound much too interesting. Prepare to be disappointed, Cedric. I forgot to mention he's usually all doom and gloom. Dion and the others, including the cat, all laughed at this remark. I won't dispute that. A short time later, the group were all sitting around the campfire, eating the delicious beef Hollis had cooked for them. The tiger jokingly scolded Selwyn as he served the cat his portion. I prepared this for Vic and Cedric, Sel, and that means no extras. All right, I didn't say I wanted any. Oh, goodness. I can read your body language, you rogue. Cedric tasted his meal, resisting the urge to gobble it down rapidly. Regardless of how hungry he was, he needed to enjoy this food properly. He smiled as he recalled that was some advice Lysander's Aunt Jane always used to give before mealtimes. The old lady might have been a bit of a nutter, but a broken clock is still right twice a day. The coyote was very impressed at how tasty the meat was, and how well the sauce accompanied it. Hollis must have served some wonderful meals in the tavern he used to work in, he thought. This is really good. Thank you, Cedric. I'm afraid it's not perfect. I wanted to get it done as quickly as I could, because I knew you boys are ravenous. No need to excuse yourself. It's fantastic. I'm glad to hear the meal is appreciated. However, I'd be very curious to learn more about our two guests this evening, our young coyote friend, and our young coyote friend in particular, whom we have heard so much about over the years, might I add. That last statement came as a big surprise to Cedric. Though the more he thought about it, it made sense Victor had spoken about him to the bandits previously. It was rather touching to think of, as, well, proof as that the fox had kept thinking about his childhood friend over the years. He then began to tell this full story of how he and Cedric first became friends, following it with a shortened list of all the events that had befallen the two cents. Cedric occasionally intervened to add what he deemed to be some relevant details or a splash of color to the tale as the others listened intently. Once Victor had finished, there was a brief moment of silence as the bandits took in all they'd just heard. Curiously, Blake was the first to speak up, giving a little snort. Oh god, one second, y'all. What the fuck was I doing for Blake? Okay. Most animals of our social class wouldn't last an hour in the wild, let alone 2 days. That was meant to be a compliment, Cedric. Well, Blake is right. I'm lucky I had Victor by my side. I wouldn't have been able to do any of this without him. I'm glad you decided to set off on this journey with me, my dear. Victor put his arm around the coyote's back, affectionately pulling him in his direction. The one side effect is you have Lord Dickface as your enemy, and he's forcing his cronies to search everywhere for you. That's a rather large sack of shite to be dealing with. You're right, but we've had worse, as you know. It's inevitable their lifestyle should lead to a fair amount of risk-taking. I think you've been very brave, both of you. Selwyn said this out loud, but was too embarrassed to make proper eye contact with either of the two. Dion softly chimed in. Indeed, it's a fascinating story. And I might ask what's going to happen in the next chapter. What are your plans for the foreseeable future? Good question. I honestly wish we could give you a half-decent answer. If that be the case, might I make a suggestion? The hyena touched his own chin, crossing his fingers just below his mouth. We're all ears. Stay with us for a few days, even a few weeks if it suits you. I know you both set off with your own plans, but as in all good stories, life has found its way of subverting them. Once you've both gathered enough money and feel ready, then you could finally travel eastward, reach the larger towns, and start things over by seeking employment like you were originally hoping to. The fox nodded and turned to his friend. What do you think, Cedric? I agree. That sounds like the best plan for what we could follow right now. Dion stood up and walked over to where the coyote was seated, holding out his right hand. For the time being, we're happy to have you as our guest, my boy. As Cedric shook his hand, suddenly the hyena burst out laughing. Why, we haven't even told him the name of our group. He quickly regained his composure, clearing his throat dramatically. Cedric, it is with great pride that I introduce you to The Masquerade. Excuse me, my brilliant idea, of course, a sort of tribute to the stage. Victor interrupted Dion before the hyena could get too carried away with his explanation. Basically, each one of us has their own mask. It's part of the gimmick, as well as another reason why I decided to buy mine. Cedric couldn't help but smile at this information. How very theatrical. But of course, I'm a former actor myself. Cedric will have noticed, no doubt. The coyote joined in, laughing with the others. That would explain a lot, and it would certainly explain Hearn's Oak. Indeed, I imagine someone of your status would be well versed in literary works, my boy. My boy. Now, please make yourself at home. I'll set up your sleeping quarters. And there's a stream over there to your left, just beyond those trees if you need a wash. Thank you for your wonderful hospitality. It is much appreciated. The hyena turned his attention to Victor, whom he noticed was getting up from the log he'd been seated on during his meal. Perhaps you and I could have a word later about a few important matters, Victor. Of course, Dion. There are a few things I need to ask you, too. At this point, the group split up as each member went their own way, some going back to their tents, others still lingering near the glowing embers of the campfire. Cedric thought it would be healthy to have a moment to himself, and after informing Victor, he walked off towards the stream the hyena had pointed out earlier. After getting close to the watercourse, he slowly sat down, letting its sweet and calming sound soothe his ears. He took off his boots and socks, tossing them on the surrounding grass and dipping his toes in the cool water. All the events that had happened that day seemed to flicker before his eyes as he peacefully closed his eyes. It was almost surreal to think that barely a few hours ago he and Victor were still lodging in barn at Agnes and Harold's farmstead. They'd been through so much in barely a day. Once more, the coyote couldn't help but feel like all this was meant to unfold, though perhaps it wasn't a question of fate after all. It might have been the fact that as of late Cedric felt his existence had some kind of renewed purpose, a reason why he was risking everything, the chance for a happy life. He'd fight all the guards and Lysanders in the world for this. Now, feeling like his mind was finally rested, he stood up, ready to walk back to the camp. Perhaps he could have a chat with some of the other bandits to get to know them better. If he and Victor were to follow Dion's suggestion, they would be lodging at their headquarters for a while. It'd certainly made a good first impression. The coyote felt a sense of natural ease while talking to them during the meal, the initial awkwardness of their unfamiliarity having only lasted a couple of minutes. They barely knew him and were already treating him as an old friend, which was more than he could say about Lysander's best mates Jack and Bill on the first evening they'd met. Then again, the two of them being utterly drunk in a shady gambling house on said night might have had something to do with their behavior. Alright, I'm going to pause it right there. Thank you all so much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, ring that notification bell, and check out our Patreon if you can. It always helps. Before I go, I'm going to give a quick shout out to our lovely bronze tier patrons. Thank you all for all you do for the channel. We greatly appreciate your support. Thank you to our silver tier patron, Cade Summer, and thank you for going above and beyond. It's greatly appreciated. Thanks to our three gold tier patrons, Zeke, Toby, and I think it's Blue Wolf Alpha 69. Thank you so much for your for everything y'all do. We greatly appreciate it. And if y'all want to get your names in the credits, get access to all of our Not Safe for Work contents as little as $5. Alrighty, I love you all, and I'll see you on the next video. Bye bye.